So let's talk about one of my favorite brands, Oats Overnight. In fact, I am a monthly subscriber to this brand. It's because I wanted to get more protein in the morning and do it in a way that is tasty, because my favorite one from them is the chocolate chip, just to let you know. Well, the other thing that I love about this brand is the founder story. And Brian Tate is the founder of Oats Overnight. He started with an idea, how to get more protein, same as me, and do it through the simple, humble act of eating more oatmeal. What I love about this story is that when he had this idea, which again, to most people wouldn't be a big deal. In fact, to himself, he was questioning, is this the idea I really want to pursue? He realized that in order to even get it off the ground, he needed to rally a few unicorns. And his first unicorn on his team was his mom, who his mom made him oatmeal growing up. She was like, son, you can do this and I will help support that. So she got in the kitchen with him and started, doing these recipes and figuring out ways to do that. Then he went to his poker buddies, his friends that he would get together with every couple of weeks, and said, look, I got this weird idea. I need more help in formulating it. Would you help me out? And in his little poker group, he had friends who were good at marketing and product development. His first initial team were his family and friends. And a lot of times you hear when you're starting a new thing that you go and raise money or you get angel investors from your friends. And in this case, he didn't really get a lot of money from them. He got sweat equity from them. After it started taking off, started to realize wow, this company is not about oats. This company is about the people who will help us get this simple idea to the world. And so from that, he started to hire the first people on his team. One of the things that's really cool, and if you follow Brian Tate's story and the Oats Overnight story, you'll find out that once Brian realized that it was about the who, not the what or the how, he started to double down on expanding the company's reach. He opened its own manufacturing facility in Tempe, Arizona. And to run a manufacturing facility, you need to hire people. He started to realize that instead of investing in outside investors, what he was going to do is invest in people and give them equity in the company. In fact, every employee of Oats Overnight is an equity stake owner in his company. With that focus and understanding that the who was more important than the how or the what, his company has grown significantly. Since 2021, they've had a 350% increase in revenue just by focusing on a team-centered culture and approach to growing the business. They've tripled their active subscribers since that time as well. As I mentioned, I am a subscriber. I get my overnight oats every single month. After bootstrapping that with the right people, they were able to attract more than $35 million in outside funding, which now positions them for a $1 billion valuation. In fact, in 2023 alone, they increased their revenue to $100 million selling oatmeal. In fact, 40 flavors of oatmeal. Right now, they've grown from his initial employees of his mom and his poker buddies to 350 full-time employees, and they plan on hiring more. But the main thing that I want you to take away from this is that Brian started to realize that his ideas were ideas that people not just wanted because the idea was good, but it was because who he was willing to be in order to make those ideas to come true. So one thing you might be curious about is what I said about him giving equity to his employees early in the process. And a lot of people who are just starting out their ideas, they don't know how to compensate for A players or qualified people on their team. And what Brian did is an example of what I call creative compensation. In fact, an entire chapter in my book, Unicorn Team, has that layout, different ways that you can get people on board without having the full cash flow or funding that you need to grow the business. In this case, Brian Tate started out giving everyone equity in the initial phase of growing Oats Overnight. But once he realized how much people were invested, not just because he gave them equity, but because they saw themselves as owners of the business, that was a huge catalyst for their growth. And they also started to really showcase their values. For example, one of the stories that he talks about is one of the heads of their actual factory, who said that he wanted to work for Oats Overnight. He sought them out because first he was a consumer of the product because his wife had celiac disease and he needed to find a way. They were a busy family. Wife has celiac. They have 3 little kids. His wife needed to get breakfast just like the rest of them without, frankly, getting sick. And so he started subscribing to Oats Overnight and realized, I want to work for a company like this that makes a tasty option that's easy for a busy family. And that person sought out the company and wanted and volunteered to work for them. And now this person is an equity stake owner. My point here about creative compensation is if you start to embody your values and offer various compensation packages that in the beginning will allow people to jump on board, you will start to attract even bigger A players because they're attracted to the brand and they want to actually work for you, which then increases the revenue, the cash flow, the reach, and outside investing, which is what Brian Tate did as well when he started to partner with the venture capital firms to give him more infusions of cash so that he could grow the business. So the funny thing is that you might think that it's a bunch of confidence that made Brian Tate give equity early or go all in on his idea. And I honestly don't know if it's confidence. What I can say is his idea was simple, which is a good thing. Oatmeal delivered to people monthly. That was his idea. And a lot of people can't state their ideas simply and clearly. It's hard for people to jump on board and even trust you and your leadership and even take an equity stake without a lot of, let's say, salary or compensation up front. But if you can keep things simple and get people enrolled into your vision, we like to think that that's confidence. I call it him being an essentialist. He realized that the simpler the idea, the better for them to grow and to get past the early stages of actually making and proving that this idea was worth doing. I think that the other thing is he definitely approached it as we're going to try this thing on and we're going to go all in for the next few quarters and see if we can get people to actually buy oatmeal through the internet and through the mail. Because he kept his goals simple and focused, people who worked with him in the initial days trusted that. By the way, this is no different than what Steve Jobs did when he first wanted to bring computing to people's homes. People thought that Steve Jobs was crazy, that like nobody's going to want a computer in their house. They use these computers at their work. They're not going to want personal computing at their fingertips in their home. So when we talk about confidence, part of that comes from that you don't overcomplicate your ideas and that you can clearly communicate them to other people. Even in my book, Unicorn Team, I give you a communication tool that helps you distill those ideas. It's called a brand cast. Your ability to be able to cast your brand's vision in a simple yet potent way. And that's when people will come and jump on board and grow it with you. If you're interested in knowing how to build your own brand cast, there is another video in my YouTube channel that you can refer to get that and get it going. If you want to become like Brian Tate, whatever your idea is, it doesn't matter if you're starting an oatmeal company or you're a service provider or you're maybe even writing a book, maybe that's your idea, then you want to pick up my book, Unicorn Team, the 9 leadership types you need to launch your big ideas with speed and success. Because inside of the book, a lot of the same frameworks and tools that I refer to, what Brian Tate did with Oats Overnight, is exactly what you can do to bring your ideas to life with the people who will rally around them.